All right, hello. Today is, I don't know, we did this with Brian Dam yesterday, so I suckered Doug Wilson into this today. So we're going to give this another go here. So I'm calling this off the cuff because this is no prep conversations around client management. Today we've got Doug Wilson. He's an enterprise mobility MVP consulting with Now Micro, and he specializes in EDU, but he has a large breadth of experience across the Intune space and Windows Client Management, Config Manager, and those sorts of things. So welcome, Doug.
Hello.
And audience.
Going,
we're getting folks jumping in from Twitter and from Discord. So welcome to the party. Yeah, we're going to just get rolling here and see how it goes. So Doug, I know I kind of said who you are, but tell us who you are.
Well, Adam's already said my name. I'm an enterprise mobility MVP. I've been consulting for probably about 4 years, a lot of enterprise experience. So I love working with education because it's usually a more tedious and tight-knit group, I guess I'd say. But also, again, work a lot with enterprise as well. So hoping that I can get some questions answered in here and just want to have a general discussion about management. And there's a lot of misinformation that I always see go around Twitter. So maybe hit some of those topics as well.
Well, that sounds good. So I think I inflamed some folks on Twitter this earlier this week with something that I did not intend to really throw out that way. But so let's start and just say that, okay, number one, everything that we're going to talk about is framed within our experience and within the environments that we are familiar with and the challenges that we've encountered throughout our careers. So your environment may be completely unique and different, and you've got all these different challenges to focus on. And so this isn't meant as a way to say there's only one way to do this. In fact, that's kind of what we're hoping to talk about, is telling you all of the ways that you can do things, and maybe helping point the direction for some of the folks that may be just putting their toe in this water on client management and what we can do in this space. So Doug, let's start out and talk about Autopilot and Autopilot White Glove. I know so this is kind of where this all centered around. And so from a real world practical perspective, how are you seeing companies use Autopilot White Glove, and how are they transitioning from traditional imaging where they're using MDT or Config Manager or some other tool to prep their machines, and bringing Autopilot into their mainstream work process?
So a lot of my clients, honestly, even K-12s and K-20s, a lot of them use Config Manager currently, and they want an easier way to hand a computer to their end users, their faculty, staff, because they have small IT departments. They don't have time to what we would call the white glove handling of devices in the past, where it's like, well, we sit down with the user, configure everything they need for it. Now we're setting up provisioning profiles to these users through groups in Intune, where we hand them a computer. As soon as they log in, it's like, hey, welcome to our organization. Please give it a few minutes. And after 10 or 15 minutes, it'll pre-configure the device with all your policy. So again, this doesn't necessarily mean group policy, but using policy from Intune, we'll have all this policy applied down to the device. Any of the required applications get pushed down to the device. This could include your VPN software or your security agent if you're using any third-party securities, and then have Word and other applications pushed down afterwards. So the user can be using a computer within 15 minutes of it being brand new right out of the box, with minimal IT intervention. And that's kind of the main goal of Autopilot, is how do we kind of get away from this traditional, well, this image is going to take an hour, or, hey, we need to unbox this, put it on this bench, plug it in, and tell the user, hey, come get it at this time, instead of just handing it off. So we're just trying to make a more repeatable process that's less management.
And so I would say that at least some of this is, I guess, to even frame the conversation a little bit more even now, is the idea that lots of companies are now looking at the reality of work from home for a lot more of their population, and potentially for an even extended period of time. And so you're going to have to deal with getting hardware to your users in a timely manner so that they can work. And so let's imagine you've got a user who doesn't have a computer currently and they're not allowed in the office, so they can't work. And now what? And so being able to order a device with Autopilot enabled on it, have it shipped directly to their home, or even go and have them pick it up at Best Buy and be able to log into that machine and get it up and running in a reasonable period of time, is still, to me anyway, from my perspective, it sure feels like a faster way to do this than potentially ordering into a central location, having to staff with IT people that are there to receive the devices and image them and then box and reship to a user, given the idea that your users are all remote. I mean, is that a realistic expectation here, a realistic way? I mean, obviously you're still dealing with, well, your software or your hardware vendor still may take a while to get the hardware to you. But I mean,
especially right now.
Yeah, right now, especially right now, sure. So I mean, so what are some good strategies that you would recommend for being able to deal with the current environment? Enabling your fully remote workforce to get up and running, to get imaged or whatever as quickly as possible.
I mean, depending on how it really does depend on how large your organization is, because configuring Intune straight away and trying to get it rolling out, it's really important to have everything, like at least your groupings and your naming standards, configured first, in my opinion. So like, how do we want to organize this to make sure it makes sense going forward? But realistically, you can have devices starting to autopilot within a day if you own Intune currently. So if we can do dynamic groups and have people enroll and be licensed, you should be able to start having it tested within a day or two. It's the applications that can take a little bit longer. So mapping out what are the critical applications these users need to be able to access from their devices. The other issue you run into with it is, do they require a lot of on-prem connectivity? And there's additional configurations, but looking at that modern management, I'm trying to push environments to be less reliant on on-prem resources. So instead of them saying, well, everything's on this network drive over here, ooh, my hand showed up. So everything's on this network drive over here. I'm trying to help do that transition more to the cloud, where maybe these business files that everybody shares are now in SharePoint, or all your files are in OneDrive that are what you need to work with. But if they're your team files, maybe they're out in SharePoint, and that relies on a different type of trust versus me having to connect back over VPN to my local office to access that data. So just get the main things, get the initial configuration profiles, the restriction profiles made in Intune. I could honestly go over that, but that takes a little more than 30 minutes to show all the profiles in Intune, because they keep making them bigger and bigger every month. They get more and more features in there.
So essentially, we need to have Intune configured properly, but then we need to work. So we're worried about security. So we need to make sure that you're enabling things like Hello for Business or some other biometrics things and conditional access, limiting who can get to what resources before you just start sending your company data out in the wild. But then you should also be making sure that your data is stored in the cloud and not reliant on local resources and those sorts of things. So that's great. So let's talk about let's talk about the scenario for white glove versus regular autopilot, and then maybe even talk about, well, what's the difference between autopilot? What does autopilot get me versus buying a machine at Best Buy and logging in with my company credentials on it to provision that device? What are the differences there?
So white glove is one of the big things I like about white glove is it gives that user a little bit more of that handheld experience, in my opinion. If you have a vendor provisioning devices for an end user that's going to ship them out, they can pre-provision those devices if it's been assigned to a user and have the device settings already applied. So where that is helpful is if you're doing hybrid joins and there's network connectivity, you can white glove a computer and have it joined to your local domain, which is in public preview, I believe, at the moment, in Intune. So you can white glove a computer, have it joined down to your local Active Directory, and then you can hand it off to your user who just logs in with their regular domain name. That's really useful for the kind of the traditional requirement of needing all these on-prem resources still. Again, it also puts down the device settings so it can speed up some of those device-based applications. So if you have devices that require a lot of other apps, you can have those required to a device and it'll come down there. Like, again, that's where I'd put my VPN software and my antivirus or any other security softwares that I require for my organization. But just grabbing a device off the shelf at a big box store, realistically, to have that in Autopilot, I have to actually get that hardware hash uploaded into my tenants, which is fairly easy to do. You can do that in the administrative setting. I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head at the moment for some reason, but it's like Control-Shift F3 at the out-of-box experience screen. It'll flip you over into the admin UI. But you can pull the hardware hash there, and that can just let you do Autopilot. Logging in that way and having Autopilot will build a little bit more of a trust for most organizations, and it'll allow you to auto-assign a device as a corporate device instead of having a user have to assign that. And I call this out because there's a lot of organizations that are going to initially block personal devices being enrolled into Intune management. So if that's being blocked and I pull a device from the Best Buy shelf or Costco or wherever you're getting your computer from, and I try and log into it with my corporate identity, it might get blocked trying to get managed and getting into work resources because I don't allow personal devices. So that's one of the big differentiators there that I've seen.
Excellent. That's good. And so I mean, it sounds like for the most part, users aren't going to be able to just go to a big box store, grab a computer and autopilot it, or even most cases join it to your network on their own, probably without a little bit of intervention of either uploading that hardware hash or some other, or allowing that particular unique device to make it in to get enrolled. So being able to partner with a vendor to order your hardware with those hashes already uploaded to Intune for Autopilot to work, I think sounds like the better approach if you're already in this camp of being able to do this. Now, obviously, if you're just now looking at it and saying, well, I don't have any of this configured, how do we start today? And I've got users that are home and all that sort of stuff, it becomes a much more difficult kind of thing. But I think I would hope that that what's going on right now hopefully will help drive the conversation of, hey, we should really be looking at this and start considering moving to this technology and starting to prep for this. So let's talk a minute about I had a thought there. No, I lost it. No, it keeps coming and going. I had it. Azure AD join versus hybrid join. That's the one. Jeez. Oh, sorry. So let's talk about taking an Azure AD joined machine, which does not require a line of sight to an Active Directory. And line of sight just means you're plugged into the business network. So to do a hybrid join, you have to be plugged into the business network to do it.
Unless you're white gloved.
Unless you're white glove, but then to white glove you still would have still done it the first time, right? And to log in with the user's domain credentials the first time on a white glove device would need. So I mean, if we're talking about Azure AD join machine, but I've got, let's say, on-prem resources and stuff. I mean, what can I and can't I do? I guess really I'm trying to head back to Azure AD Join and co-management, and talking about how that ties into Config Manager. So, you know, what if I don't have all my apps in Intune right now? What if I, you know, so I do Autopilot, Azure AD Join, and how do I get my apps to my boxes? Sorry, I know it took me a long way around. I've been thinking about this one.
I mean, there's a lot more to that. So for the most part, I tell people don't worry about hybrid join unless hybrid join's a lot easier to use if you have a lot of on-prem resources you need to access. It just because you have that certificate trust and it trusts those credentials that way. You can do just pure Azure AD join and have the certificate configured to deploy your root certificates and other methods to your devices so they can still access those on-prem scenarios easier. But again, that's one of the ones I really do try and avoid, just because I try and keep it as simple as possible. But for co-management or just the Microsoft Endpoint Manager to utilize all the resources together now, where I really look at doing is having Config Manager and CMG set up, the cloud management or the cloud distribution points enabled, and all of that tied into the Intune Endpoint Manager now, Microsoft Endpoint Manager now. So if I have a device that's Azure AD Join, goes through Intune Autopilot, it can auto get the client pushed out to it, and it can talk to the cloud management gateway, get any of the particular content through the cloud distribution point, and tie back into Config Manager, so you can have a little bit more of the management capability there that you might need.
Yeah, and so I really like that functionality in terms of being able to have that kind of single pane of glass type. Like, I don't have to manage my devices in two places necessarily. I can autopilot them, Azure AD join them, and then I can still see and manage that device inside my Config Manager console with co-management enabled, and still be able to get some of that same functionality that I'm used to for my on-prem stuff, if I want to do that. If I'm, you know, if I'm still making that transition, right?
Like there's definitely a reason I do what I do with endpoint and mobility. I mean, what the Microsoft teams have done, what the product teams have done with Config Manager and Intune is amazing, I think. And I know a lot of people out there agree, but having them become the same product under Microsoft Endpoint Manager, where it's one pane of glass, like, I like being able to go on my phone and going out to my device management portal and being able to reboot a computer or wipe a computer if I need to, versus, oh crap, let me go pull out my laptop. Hold on, let me find the hotspot here and get my VPN going so I can connect into Config Manager and push out a piece of software. If it's managed by both, where I have Intune being the main lead, I can have Intune push all my content out that's needed. I can have it do most of the management there, and just rely on Config Manager for some heavier lifting if need be.
Yeah, and I really like that. I mean, being able to have, you know, basically the Intune company portal and the Config Manager software center running side by side on a machine, it's kind of a nice way to do it. I mean, this is the whole use which pieces of the tool set make the most sense for your organization type discussion that we've been hearing coming from Microsoft for a bit now. Just, hey, you know, we've got tools, but right, they all, you know, they're all complementary and they can all work together. It's not move from one to the other, but it's, you know, it's been this thing of like move from Config Manager to Intune and use co-management to get there. But it's like, well, you know, you could go the other way too. You can start on the Intune side and then still leverage the Config Manager pieces on the back end if you still have reliance on that sort of stuff.
I mean, and where I see Config Manager playing a big role, especially around EDU, is their project lead the way images. I mean, I don't know if anybody out here has a lot of experience in there, but some of these computers I get, these requests I get are like, they need 50 gigs or more of applications pushed out to it. And I mean, these applications are not quick installers. I mean, it's every version of AutoCAD capability out there, or all the entire Adobe Cloud Suite pushed out to a device. And those can take a while. So that's where Config Manager, honestly, it makes it a little easier. So again, build it out, like build the PLTW image with config manager, and then have that image be managed later by Intune. Like, again, it gives you kind of the best of both worlds there.
Definitely.
And then I was going to say it's also intuitive, like Software Center and Company Portal. Yeah, if they're both on your computer, they know which one is managing your applications. They'll tell you this is managed by Software Center, go over there. So I think it does do a pretty good job of not having conflict there.
I would hope so, right?
No, it does. It
complementary tools, right? Okay, so let's take a quick moment on it. We've got a couple of attendees in our session here. So if you've time for questions, if you have anything you'd like to bring up or talk about or ask, glad to throw Doug under the bus here because he's the guest. So either speak up or put something in the chat. It's fine if you don't. You can hit us up later and harass us.
We can just cut this out of the video.
Yeah, we'll just leave. Yeah, just imagine we end it here as well. So, okay, so we kind of promised EDU conversation here. So we've been talking general client management type thing, but so I mean, we kind of hear frequently EDU's is a special case. They have special needs and
lead the way.
Yeah. So I mean, what are the unique challenges that you see in EDU, and how do you typically approach those, address those, and what are the things that maybe you see as gaps still in the technology, or places where maybe EDU orgs don't quite see how the technology can help them in their current environments?
Honestly, I find more of a gap with IT departments trying to run config manager for their small school. I run into a lot more flaws in these environments versus if they just use something like Intune. But realistically, where I've seen Intune's management and capabilities at recently, I can deploy computers out. Like where white glove can be really useful is that actually if there was, say I have like a kindergarten class or something, I'm deploying a bunch of lightweight laptops out to them. I can deploy them with however the profile is configured. Because I mean, let's be realistic, most schools don't expect these students, all these students to be able to log into a computer when they first see one. And that's fine. We don't need everybody to have that unique ID right away. Like obviously in security and everything, we prefer everyone to have their unique ID and no one to share credentials, but it's education. I've seen it that way a lot.
My kids' teachers send passwords home all the time for them. So clearly somebody knows their credentials.
Intune makes managing kiosks. Like, I mean, I could treat some of these devices like kiosk type devices, or have them with the Windows write filtering type scenario on them through either config manager or other third-party tools. But there's so many ways out there with just Intune just to manage these devices in education, and it's usually the concern of how do we get these apps out to teachers right away. And the only limitation I have with Intune at the moment, which there's actually a lot of workarounds for, is that you can only package an app that's up to 8 gigs in size. Now, do you really want to be deploying an 8 gig image over the internet to a device? I mean, probably not. It's not always going to be the best experience, but it can do it. But that's where I always push co-management for. Or if you're doing a large deployment, Intune allows you to use a flash drive during the out-of-box experience that you plug into the computer, it gets configuration and starts building out that way. And that's a really, really fast experience. And I could even load over 20 gigs of apps that way into the computer with ease. So I can provision a computer out quickly with a flash drive. And that's utilizing Windows Configuration Designer or even set up school PCs. And there's even a special portal for the education team. So if you are a really small EDU organization, and maybe you're a teacher who also manages your couple dozen devices, there's Intune for Education, a specialized portal that will take you through a really, really fast setup of your organization and walk you through, here's the basic policies that Microsoft recommends, here's some of the basic apps, here's configuring the Microsoft Store for Education. And all of that can be done. I'd have to look up the portal, which I'll do real quick. But all of that can be done fairly easily if you have the Intune licensing.
And so, I mean, one of the things that is kind of fun from our perspective is you have to be an EDU or a reseller for EDU to be able to even get into EDU stuff, to even poke at it. From what I've
not the
seen.
Intune education portal though.
Oh, really?
Any enterprise. So, Adam, if you wanted on your work environment, you could go to intuneeducation.portal.azure.com is the one that brought me to. That doesn't seem like the proper portal, but it probably is. If you want to take note to be able to save it to this video later. But intuneeducation.portal.azure.com is where it brought me. And I'm running this in an enterprise tenant because I'm not EDU. I don't have an EDU tenant. You can't touch an EDU tenant without being education. So there's a launching express configuration on there that would walk you through it really, really quickly. Let's see if I can actually share this out even.
You should be able to. If not, I can as well. I've got it pulled up.
Would you become? Yeah, if you want to share it out, I can walk.
Yeah, I don't
just kind of show it a bit.
Sure. 1 second. Figure out how to use Teams again. Share dashboard. There we go.
Your mic is picking up a little bit of a leaf blower type sound.
Yeah, some lawn guys appear to have shown up just about this time. So yay.
That's nice. Yeah. So this is a education portal, and again, its goal here is to make your life a lot easier and really easy to manage. So the express configuration is, if you haven't done anything in Intune, an enterprise could even come through and do this, and it'll actually show up in the full Intune portal. It's just meant to make things a lot easier and more a simplified pane.
Well, that's pretty cool. Hang on, I need to switch tenants. I think I got the wrong tenant there. But anyway, you get the idea,
yeah,
I believe.
If you are an enterprise or an education using Configuration Manager, I'll still normally point you to the main Intune portal because that's where you can manage everything. The Intune for Education portal doesn't have every single feature available, but it's not geared for that. That's not the purpose of it. But again, in education, they also do a lot of take a test profiles. So in Intune, there's at the third from the bottom there, take a test profile. So you can quickly make a configuration profile for that computer for test taking and lock down the device that way.
Wow, that's fantastic. I like that. So then, you could provision this down to a particular machine so that when they go to it looks like a URL to take a test, then it would block other things from occurring while they're doing it.
At the lock screen, there's a option for the take a test profile.
Oh wow! Okay.
So you select that, and it would lock down the computer to your specifications there.
Wow, that's fancy.
It does work.
Nice.
And there's a whole docs page. Of course, there's a whole docs page on it that explains how it all works.
I like it. Yeah. So if we did the express config, it would walk us through setting up. Now, obviously, I've got my tenant already configured to do some things, but I could. I like the wizard though. This is pretty cool.
So, and there is another feature that's not apparent on that dashboard. That is something that I know a lot of educations do struggle with. At least, how do they manage this easier? Because students move from class to class, and this works from K-12 or K-20, so it works for everyone. One moment.
Oh, as we've learned on Intune.training, it's always the cell phone going off in the background.
Not even my cell phone. I don't use an iPhone. But so one of the things that education gets is something called School Data Sync. So it's a free service from Microsoft that allows your Intune. Yeah, there you go. It allows you to synchronize your student information system into either like Office 365 groups and design groups out of them to help manage with Intune. So I could have like certain classes that are built out, like this is one class or another class, like your science class or your CAD class. I'm failing at coming up with schedules at the moment.
It's impossible to get
education.
It's impossible to come up with demo content on the fly. I never can get good examples.
But
that's all right.
So this allows you to synchronize that roster information up into Azure and can help you with that capability. And I know Microsoft's actively working on it to make it better and to give you capabilities. So,
well, that's pretty really cool. Yeah, so you essentially, so it's looking like it tells you how you can sync it, so you can essentially go into your system,
out there,
export it out in a CSV format, upload this, and go to chat. Looks like. And some of the cooler ones appear to have API support even. So, well, that's pretty cool. So then this is essentially taking all of your data about your classes, about your students, your enrollment, and what classes they're in, that sort of thing, and then auto generate users and or groups and things inside of your Intune portal.
Yeah. And wow, outside of these, I usually treat most EDUs pretty similar to enterprise in the sense that the technology doesn't differ that greatly. The term enterprise and education in what we do in IT can usually be interchanged. So like Windows 10 education, Windows 10 enterprise, they're almost identical in every way, shape, and form for the operating system. Just if your EDU use education, you get more features for EDU capabilities. That's really the only main focus I do. Or like the Microsoft Store for Education has their apps geared more for education than for business. And that is all built out by your tenants. So if you're an EDU tenant, you don't have to worry about making sure you go to the enterprise tenants over it.
Yeah, so what's neat is, or not neat, but just in general. So my children's school system is not an EDU, but but they still offer education. They still are offering these sorts of features in their tenant, but they don't have an actual .edu. So when you're using the word EDU, are you saying that the school itself has to be have a .edu in the URL, or are you just talking about EDU as educational institution?
An educational institution. From my understanding, I have only help guided like one or two education institutes into this, but they usually, when they set up their tenants, they have to register it with Microsoft that they're an education, and they verify that they're an EDU. And that goes along with also how you get your licensing, because again, EDU has very different licensing than enterprise or government. So, and I don't really intend to go down that rabbit hole of licensing of education at the moment, especially on a recorded webinar.
By the time we publish the video, it'll be out of sync anyway, probably. So.
Oh, I'm sure.
That's the way it goes. All right. Well, Doug, I think we've kind of probably gone on a bit, probably longer than most folks are going to sit around anyway. But
I'm sure. Okay.
So
I just like to talk, right?
Yeah. Well, so do I. That's why we're doing this, right? So I'm going to go back and just listen to your voice later anyway. So. I'll cut that out, I promise. I won't. So parting shots. What would you like? How would you like to summarize this? What do you think everybody needs to know if they listened this far or watched?
Endpoint Manager and Intune is definitely ready for you to utilize today.
Amen.
It is a modern technology that is not, you don't need to continue waiting to use it.
That's good. Good. I like it. So I'm gonna put some links when we publish this. I'll put some links to Doug's blog and Twitter. Doug is more of what would you classify yourself, a speaker, conference guy mostly?
More lively discussion. I do have a blog site, and I'm on Twitter if people want to message me on there. I'm also on the on Discord here and there. So in the community, I'm always willing to help people out if they have questions. Not always active in the blogging realm because I'm pretty busy with everything else. But yeah, just trying to be more lively. If you're in the Twin Cities area, I'm also on the board of a local user group, so I always encourage people to be active in the community. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, this has been great having you here, Doug. I think most of our folks are quiet on the chat, so no real questions coming in. So we'll end it here. But thank you so much, Doug, and yeah, we'll see you around.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Have a good day, man.
Yeah. Bye.
Go ahead and stop that recording.
Working
Stop the
on it.
recording.
Working on it.